Okay, great. So we are so happy today to have Vicki Vollweiller, I apologize, join us. She's the founder of College Financial Prep. She holds an MBA and is a divorced mom of two. She is a certified divorce coach. Today, she is going to be sharing valuable information that's going to help you save money on the cost for college or guide your clients accordingly. Typically, her clients have saved tens of thousands of dollars, and some divorce clients have saved hundreds of thousands of dollars. She's going to discuss some strategy as well as steps you need to take to find the best academic fit for your child while reducing the costs and needs for the student loan debt. We are also at the end going to briefly chat about the new Consolidated Appropriations Act, which is a big change. So for divorced professionals and divorced parents, there are going to be major changes to FAFSA. And I believe, but we'll chat more, I think that's in 2022, and I think it is with respect to this year's tax returns. So it's in 2021 to be filed next year. So a lot of important information. I'm so happy to have you join us, Vicki. Take it away.
Thank you. Let's see. Hi, everyone. So today we're going to be discussing divorce in college. As Rosemary said, let me see if I can change the screen. There, we're going to be talking. Oh, wait. Okay, well, we skipped a little bit. Sorry, it's not playing nicely with me. So just to give a little bit of a background, why this is such an important topic for families and especially divorced families. I mean, everybody knows about like student loan debts and how it's impacting so many people. And you know, the last thing that I want to do, especially as a mom myself, is to burden my kids and myself with all of the student loans. So right now, currently in the US, there's $1.57 trillion of student loan debt that's out there. Right now, 54% of college students are taking on debt. And this is, you know, going to their student loans. It's impacting their, you know, their education and their futures. Right now, it's about $37,584. That's the average amount of student loan debt per borrower. So let's discuss the impact about all this. You know, lots of people think, okay, I don't have the money, I'll just take it out in student loans, but they're not thinking long-term. I mean, for the student, really, it can impact, you know, once they graduate, do they want to go to graduate school? Or are they going to be taking out even more debt? What happens when they want to start a family, purchase a house, you know, purchase a car, you know, will it impact the job that they're able to take in the future? Are they only going to look for the one with the highest salary and not the one that's going to make them the most happy long-term? For the parent, since the student isn't able to take out the full amount of student loans, and it is a misconception that the student can take out everything, you know, what happens to the parent going forward? Is this going to impact their retirement? So it's important to think about the amount of loans that you're going to take out and what the impact is going to be going forward, not just in the short term, but also long term. So how is it best to reduce the cost of college, you know, especially when we're dealing with separation and divorce? And that's what we're going to focus on. As Rosemary said, I'm a mom of two. You know, I always wanted the best education. You know, my son is older, so he just graduated from college. You know, my goal for my kids, I want them to have the best education possible, but I also want them to have the best price, you know, have the most value out of college. So let's think about this for going forward. So in order to save money, College Financial Prep utilizes what I call the goals system. So first, it's important to generate the right college list. You want to do this before you're filling out any financial aid applications. You want to make sure that your child is applying to the right schools. And what I mean by the right schools, yes, of course, we want it to be a great academic fit, but it also has to be a great financial fit. And it's possible to find out in advance what that financial fit may look like for your specific household. It's possible that you have a neighbor that also has a child, your child's age, and both children can be applying to the same college, but both of your households are going to get very, very different bottom line costs to pay for each school. So it is possible to figure out what these net costs will be in advance, after need-based aid, after merit-based aid. It's important to consider all this even before applying to the colleges themselves. Then come October 1st, that's a big date. That's when the financial aid applications open. And that includes FAFSA, that includes the CSS profile, it includes the state forms, it includes the colleges with their own institutional forms. And typically, the earlier that you can send in your financial aid applications, the more amount of money that may be available to your child. I like to equate it to, like, if you could imagine like a big pot of money, and then as time goes on, if you hold off doing those financial aid applications, the pot shrinks. So it's important that those get submitted earlier rather than later. Then as time goes on, your child has applied to the schools, they start to receive their acceptance letters, and then your child starts to receive their financial award letters. It's very important to analyze the financial awards from the various schools, even if your child's not necessarily interested in one of those schools, because it's possible to find ways to earn more free money. Very, very important step. A lot of people think getting financial aid is all about just filling out that financial aid application. No, it's a whole process if you really want to maximize your savings. Then once you've analyzed those offers from the various schools, you want to find the ways to find more free money. It is possible to go back to the schools and negotiate, and we'll talk about that a little further. And then lastly, when you secure student loans, you want to make sure that you find the least expensive student loans and use those first before finding others. So it's a whole process to make sure that you're maximizing savings, but really it all starts with applying to the right schools. In general, though, say you have a student that's already in college and maybe you're recently separated, your child is already at, school XYZ, it is still possible to save money. So don't think because, you didn't, your child is already in college that nothing can be done. Very, very not true. I've worked with plenty of clients where the children are already college students, and based on the change in their family circumstances, they're still able to save, depending on the household's finances. I've easily seen, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 a year in savings. But again, it all depends on a number of factors. It's kind of like the weight loss commercials, not one set doesn't apply to every person. It depends on the college, it depends on the student, it depends on the family's finances. But there is, plenty of opportunity for saving. Okay, so in general, whether divorced or not divorced, where do you find free money? You have basically merit scholarships and need-based aid. With merit scholarships, most of the money comes from the colleges themselves. It's not necessarily, the big splashy, the big splashy ads, for a company that's offering a scholarship. Typically, it's the schools themselves will offer the most in money. And merit money is awarded for a variety of reasons. It's not just academics. Perhaps your child is, willing to go across the country, and they're looking to expand their demographics. They may want to entice you to enroll at their college. Or maybe, you have a child who is a great French horn player, or you have a child who's interested in, track, and they're looking for track players to join their team. There are lots of different reasons to offer students merit money. Or maybe they have a new program and your child wants to major in that program and they're looking to bring you in. So lots of different reasons for schools to offer merit money. Also, don't forget about honors programs. Honors programs are a great way to find merit scholarship money. So keep that in mind too. Now, need-based aid. To receive need-based aid, you have to complete the financial aid forms. And a lot of people think, oh no, our family's not going to qualify. Why should we bother with that? But really, there's a good number of reasons to fill out the FAFSA form. One, and it sounds counterintuitive, but some of the schools require you to have a financial aid form on file, even to qualify for merit scholarships. So even if you're going to receive 1,000 or 2,000 in merit scholarship, may as well fill out the FAFSA form. If you will need student loans, fill out the FAFSA form, because the lowest interest rate student loan comes from filling out a FAFSA form. If your child wants to apply for work study, again, you need to complete a FAFSA form. And the last main reason is, heaven forbid, there's a horrific change in circumstances, in a family, a parent gets hit by a bus, somebody loses a job, whatever it is. If you have a financial aid form on file, it's possible to go back to the school and ask them to make an adjustment, as opposed to having to wait a full year to do so. So it's almost like an insurance product in that respect. It's good to have it on file. And when you fill out the financial aid forms, so remember, it's the FAFSA form. Many of the states, not every state, also has their own financial aid form to get a little more money. There's the CSS profile, which, especially in the case of separation and divorce, it's very important to consider and discuss beforehand when you are looking at schools to apply to. CSS profile can definitely have an impact on the amount of aid that you'll receive. Ideally, depending on, who the custodial parent is, who the parent in the future, who the parent is that, provides more financial support. You want to look for the schools that ideally will only look for one parent and not necessarily both parents. It's important to be strategic in divorce to help maximize savings. And that's something that I'll work with clients early on when they're putting together their college list to help contain costs. And as we mentioned earlier, some of the schools have their own institutional forms in addition to fill out as well. So here's a little story and how it relates to college. So this is a true story. Last New Year's Eve, my heating system broke down. My basement flooded. It was a complete mess. I'm like freaking out. On January 1st, I'm trying to get people into my house to give me estimates to fix it. So anyway, I had two people over to give me estimates. First guy comes, gives me a price. Second guy comes, also gives me a price. I like the second guy better for a number of reasons, not just price, but yes, he was lower as well. So I think I'm doing the right thing. And I call the first guy and say, thank you, but I'm moving forward with somebody else. And the first thing he says to me is, can I give you a better price? My point is everything is negotiable, and that applies to colleges too. So just remember that going forward. Just because they give you a price doesn't necessarily mean that there's nothing more that can be done. So let's talk about divorce or widowhood and other extenuating circumstances, whether it be a job loss, whether it be medical illness and expenses. The key is to be strategic and apply to the right colleges and universities. That's a little bit of what we were just discussing with the CSS profile. If you're divorced, you want to look for those colleges and university that will, likely only request one parent's financial information. Really, the instances where Rosemary was saying about the amount of money I've helped people save, typically it's on the colleges that will only look at one parent's income. If your finances are limited, you want to certainly determine the net costs before you even apply to those colleges. Some schools are, $80,000 a year now. If you don't think you're going to qualify for any type of aid from those schools, what's the point? I'd rather you communicate and be upfront with your children, discuss finances, as opposed to waiting to, May 1st is decision day, waiting till, April 25th to say, I'm sorry, we just can't do it. I think it's important. Communication is very important, especially with your children, and, letting them know what money is saved, what is doable, what you can and are able to contribute going forward. It's good to be open and have that conversation with, our young adults. Lastly, if you're looking to receive merit scholarships, it's important to analyze the students, academic achievements, their number of honors classes, the number of clubs that they've held leadership positions in, and match those up with the colleges that are likely to offer them awards to attend their schools. It's not always about money, though. Well, I mean, don't get me wrong, I like to save money, but it's not just about money. So let's look at a couple of examples and you'll see what I mean. So first example, say there are two students and they both wish to become teachers. And it doesn't even matter what state they're in, but say one child decides to go to an in-state college and the other child decides to go to an out-of-state college or a private university, and that out of town or private university doesn't offer any scholarships whatsoever, whether need-based or merit aid. So the student that goes out of state or to a private school is likely going to pay more money than an in-state school. Now, really, when they both graduate and they both want to get jobs in a public school system, they're both going to need to take the same state licensing exam. They're likely going to have very similar starting salaries. But one student is going to have paid a lot more for her education or his education than the other. And therefore, the higher cost degree, will have a lower return on investment, and that student that now, that young teacher now may have loans to pay and, may have a harder time meeting their living expenses than the student that chose to go to the lower cost university. Now, for the second example, though, perhaps there's a student who has a very specialized major. Maybe the student wants to be a medical researcher, maybe they're doing something else, where by attending a specific university, even at a greater cost, their career trajectory may make it worthwhile. Maybe their projected salary will be much higher, maybe the employment opportunities available to them will be much greater. Perhaps it would make sense for that student in that situation to take on the additional student loan debt as opposed to going to a lower cost university. It's important to consider all these factors as you move forward. So now, figured I'd share some success stories and some failures, so that way everybody can get a good feeling about some things. Hello?
Hello.
So some success stories. Success stories would be where the family, the parents plan ahead of time, where they find the right schools, where they look for the ones where they don't need to share both parents' information, where they make sure that the financial aid applications are filled out completely, where they go through and look at their financial aid offers and compare everything and then negotiate with the colleges. These are the people that are able to save the thousands and thousands of dollars. I literally worked with a client this year, has nothing to do with divorce, but we appealed an offer, and out of nowhere they came back offering an additional $7,000 a year. So that was $28,000 they saved right off the bat. And then we went back and called the school and they gave an additional $3,000 a year. So ultimately, for writing a letter and for calling, we saved an additional $40,000. I mean, that was fabulous. And that had nothing to do with divorce and all the other ways to save. Failures. And this, it's happened a number of times, and I always feel sad when this happens, but there's literally nothing I could do at this point. Sometimes people will call me in the 11th hour and say, okay, my kid chose this school, they're going there tomorrow, how do we save money now? And at that point, it's too late. We've already gone through the process, you've already, committed, you've already, put down your deposit. There's no reason for the school to do anything at this point, unless there was like some recent change. In a case of a separation or divorce, it may be possible to do some adjusting, but for somebody that's been divorced for a good number of years already, and there's been no change due to unemployment or medical expenses, if there's been no family change, there's really nothing that can be done. It's so important to plan ahead of time. So, as I started to say before, there's really no right or wrong college. Every person, every family, there are different goals and values, and it's really up to both parents and the child to figure out what the child's direction is. Does the child wish to go to graduate school, and then may need to figure that into the equation and think about what type of student loan debt do we want to take on, potential student loan debt, knowing that grad school is also in the future. But again, every family is different, so just know that there's no right or wrong answer in terms of what college your student attends. So as a summary, it is always important to be mindful of college costs. We need to think about our bank accounts, our futures, our kids' futures, student loans, and whatnot. And as I said, the process of saving begins when you're initially considering colleges. So certainly junior year in high school, it's really important not only to visit colleges and research colleges, but also to research what that college is likely going to cost your family. And it can be done. Just know, and I can't stress this enough because it happens so often, saving money on college is not based solely on completing a FAFSA form. That's not the way to do it. It's so important to make sure you're picking the right colleges. For the public schools, the public universities, typically you use just a FAFSA form, and that typically right now is based on a custodial parent. A lot of the private universities do use the CSS profile. Some of those look at just a custodial parent. Some of those look at both parents. I had a situation this year, and here's something else to discuss. I had a situation this year, divorced parents, the kids were all applying to private schools, twins, and both parents were remarried. So now we were dealing with 4 parents for their applications. And it's really important to consider, what the potential impact is depending on what school they're going to, and what those numbers are going to look like, because they do consider step parents in the equation. We started to discuss before communicating with family members, be open, discuss finances, set goals, set expectations. You don't want to wait till April 25th or, the end of April to have that conversation and say, sorry, we just can't do it. What's going to happen with the kids then? They're just going to be upset and think that, it's better to work together than to wait to the last second like that. And realize, there are great opportunities that can happen from attendance at most any school. It's going to be up to the kids to go and find those opportunities no matter where they are. So it doesn't matter if they're at a small public university, a large private university. It's going to be up to the kids, and they're the ones that are going to do the job to start building their resumes and finding those experiences that are going to lead them to success in the future. That's our little presentation for today. So, just to recap, college financial prep, helps kids develop the college list and the families, go through the financial aid opportunities, scholarships, and the student loan process. And we want to help you maximize your savings and reduce the need for any student loan debt.
Thank you, Vicki. We have a question, and I absolutely have some. So for anybody who does have questions, put them in the chat. So the first question, Vicki, is how do people know what schools require the CSS profile?
There is a list out there, that people can find, but that's certainly one of the things that I help with. The list isn't always accurate, so it takes a little digging. But in the main, like the public in the main, there are a couple of public universities that don't fit this, but in the main, the public universities require just FAFSA. Yeah. Typically it's the schools like Syracuse and GW and BU and, some of those that require CSS profile. Again, not every school requires both parents' information, but yeah, it's important to research that.
Mhm. And that actually was one of my questions. How do you, and I guess it's just research. We're all good at getting our online research done. But when you're looking for schools to develop your child's college list, particularly for divorced and separating parents, it's important to do that research or work with somebody like you to find the schools that, even if they require the CSS, are only looking for one parent. And also, do you have any hints with regard to researching the schools that do give the most merit? Because like you said, it's not always based on AP classes and honors and your academics. There might be other types of merit.
Some of the schools provide some information on their websites as far as merit aid, not every school. But, specific, like if you look into the school's honors programs, like that's a fabulous place to really get nice merit aid. So some of the schools, I'm trying to think how to say this. Say your child would be, an online target school would be a very difficult level, college or university. But say instead you step it down, one notch and look for those honors programs at the schools like one notch below. They're still great schools, but can get a ton in savings. Plus the honors programs come with so many benefits. Like they'll usually, not every school is the same, but usually there'll be priority registration, priority housing, extra networking events with like faculty or specific classes and workshops geared just towards the honors students. Lots of nice benefits.
That's been my experience as well, that most honors programs do give more merit than the non-honors programs. But it's not for everybody. Not every kid's getting into the honors programs. I do have a question. I don't see any other, but please, anybody here, feel free to jump in. You can, if you want to speak, just put something in the chat so Hollis and I know to take you off mute. But can you talk a little about the changes? Because as of now, when you're divorced or separating, the custodial parent is the parent with whom has to file the FAFSA and the CSS. And that's also sort of a strange thing because more and more we have shared custodial arrangements. And so a lot of us aren't deemed a custodial parent, but now that's changing anyway. And my understanding is the FAFSA, the parent whom provides more financial support is going to have to be filing the papers. How is that even going to be determined? And maybe you don't know because it's brand new.
Well, so we really don't know. And what I just heard a couple of days ago is that the government isn't even set up for this now. So my understanding is it's being delayed at least a year. So originally it was supposed to go into effect for the 23-24 academic year. Now I'm hearing 24-25. But yeah, there are no real guidelines about it yet. My understanding though is that, so yes, instead of using the custodial parent, they were going to be looking for the parent that provides the most financial support for the child. But, how is that exactly determined? Is it just from child support, or what about the parent that does have, custody, so to speak, if you can't determine who has custody? And do you include things that aren't necessarily part of child support? Maintaining a car to drive the children places. So I'm still waiting for further guidance on the whole thing. Something else that changed or is changing with this FAFSA Simplification Act that affects everybody, not just separated or divorced individuals, is that the colleges used to look at how many children you had in college at the same time. Now they're no longer going to be doing that. So if your family presumably had an expected family contribution of $50,000, now they'd split it between the two children and say, okay, it would be $25,000 each. Now they're not doing that. It's just going to be 50,000 for each
That's
child.
insane.
Yes.
That's insane. And just in time for me to have 3 kids in college. Thank you very much.
But I mean, realistically, what people don't necessarily understand is EFC isn't even an accurate number. So actually, with the FAFSA Simplification Act, they're changing it. They're not going to call it EFC anymore. They're going to call it Student Aid Index, SAI. And really, every school has their own formula in terms of how they determine how much need-based aid they offer, you know, how much merit-based aid. So, you know, just because your family, and I'm making this up, may have an EFC of $10,000 doesn't necessarily mean you're going to pay $10,000 to every single university. It doesn't work that way. It would be great if it did, and you know, much simpler for people, but it doesn't.
I do want to go, there is another question in the chat, but I do want to just go back to something you said, because I think it's really important. Nobody seems to know what that means, how they're going to determine who is providing more financial support for a child, because maybe there's child support, maybe there's other expenses, maybe there's a shared responsibility for certain expenses. And I feel for whomever has to sort of try to get through those documents to figure that one out. But if I'm not mistaken, I think you and I spoke about this offline, isn't the fallback the parent with the higher AGI? And isn't that going to, in essence, be what they're going to look at if it's so difficult to determine?
I'm not sure yet.
Who knows? Who knows? Right?
I'm not sure. You know, it seems like stuff keeps changing on this every day. So yeah, originally it was supposed to go into effect 23-24. You'd be filling it out in fall of 22 using 2021 tax returns, which is now. But since it's being delayed a year, you know, at least right now, we don't have to be.
That's what we've got.
Exactly. You know, so you brought up before the point about, you know, joint custody. You know, it's still possible with the 365 days in a year, you know, one person has them 182, one person has them 183, you know, which one has them more, you know, or you could fall back on which one provides more, you know, in financials, you know, that's also one of the considerations. But, you know, typically with custodial parents, you could figure out how to split it.
And that was the question somebody else asked in the chat. For this year, is the custodial parent still the parent with more days?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but that also depends on which schools you're applying to and what forms you need to fill out.
Right.
You know, FAFSA will ask about that. CSS, not necessarily. It depends, you know, regardless, you know, with the CSS profile, some of the schools you need to provide information for both parents and, you know, potentially both parents' new spouses. And yeah, that's why I said it takes a lot of strategic planning beforehand.
So I have a question, another question, and please feel free, anyone else, to jump in. But for the divorce professionals here, and something else you and I have talked about, when guiding our clients through this aspect of their divorce agreement, I think one really important thing is just that expectation that both parents are going to cooperate with regard to this whole process, because there are things in place, and I think it's under CSS, if there's a parent who isn't cooperating or isn't able to provide their information or refuses to provide this information. So do you have any thoughts about that whole area?
Part of the CSS profile, you can request a waiver to not include the other parent's information. However, you know, the CSS profile gets sent to all of the schools you list on the application. And some schools will say, oh, okay, we understand that. And other schools will say, tough, then we're just not providing you with, you know, it's really school specific what they're going to do with it. You know, I've seen horrific situations where I'm being dead serious. A client came to me with a binder, I mean, a fat, huge, you know, real stack, where they were, all the court documents about why the child doesn't have a relationship with the other parent, and you know why the other parent has no relationship with the child and not going to be contributing anything. And even though we explained all this, the school said, you know, sorry, no can do. So it really depends on the schools. There's no cookie cutter answer.
Yeah. Well, it's certainly a complicated process. And so we appreciate your help and your insight. Does anyone have any more questions? I don't see any other questions in the chat.
Vicki, I just, and everybody, and Rosemary, it's Ellie. I just unmuted myself.
Sure. Hi, Ellie.
And I just wanted to know is if I have some clients who could desperately use this recorded video. So what's the access to that going to be?
Yeah, we can email it. I am recording it, Ellie.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Actually, if okay with you, I'm going to leave up this screen so that way, if you have any clients that want to reach out, my contact information is here, and they could certainly, visit my website and join the Facebook group and, give me a call with any questions.
Well, thank you again so much. This is so helpful, and it is just sort of the tip of the iceberg with respect to getting through this heinous process. So we appreciate it. We really do. Thank you so much. And if there's no further questions, we're going to conclude.
Thanks, everybody.
Right. Thank you for joining us. Keep an eye on our website for our additional workshops we'll be offering. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thanks, Rosemary. Thanks, Alice.
You're welcome. Nice to see you.
You too.
Bye.